And I really am interested in trying to see how, digitization and tech can help us to find solutions for the problems that we face as a continent and as a country. So yeah, that's it about me. And I think outside of that, I think I a person who loves hiking. I love going out to meet people. I love playing basketball. Yeah, so I don't know if there's anything else you want to know, Jonas.
No. Maybe I could ask you one thing. You kind of resemble Idris Alba a little bit. Do you have any like family connections or something? Or have you heard that before?
Yeah. No, actually, you're the first person to say that. Maybe I should ask my. I'll ask my mom, then I'll let you know.
yeah, ask your mom. All right, thank you so much, Francis. The next speaker on this awesome panel is Kamal Niambwengi. Hi, Kamal. How are you doing?
Hey, Jonas, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us. Could you tell the audience a little bit about you and what you do?
All right. So my name is Kamau Nyabwengi. I'm the CEO and founder of the Young Entrepreneurs Network Africa, which is a networking platform that allows young entrepreneurs to connect. So we do events and programs that are centered around enterprise development. One of the programs that we run is we call it Yen Golf. So we teach young entrepreneurs how to play golf, young entrepreneurs and professionals how to play golf. And as they do that, they get a chance to network and just build synergies for business. Besides that, we're also interested in blockchain, which is the technology that powers cryptocurrencies, and we are currently in the process of developing a stable coin that is going to be used for savings, credit, and investments. Yes, so just in the long shot of it, that's I am, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Kamal. Welcome to this panel. Thank you for joining us. The last speaker is Timothy Gachucha. Hi, Timothy. How you doing?
Hi, very well. I'm doing very well.
Perfect. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about who Timothy is for the audience?
All right. So my name is Timothy Gachucha. I'm an innovation and policy enthusiast. I have been working in this space for about 10 years now, mostly working around creating enabling environment for young entrepreneurs to thrive. And so we do this by, I've been doing this by working with different stakeholders across board, from policymakers to the private sector. I sit in a small technical committee within Kenya Private Sector Alliance, working around creating enabling environment for young youth in business to thrive, because the private sector has mostly been known for the big enterprises. So that's a part of the work that I've been doing. And most recently, I joined Chess Africa, which is working around leapfrogging designers across board, so fashion designers, interior designers, and seeing what potential can we upscale within the space of driving the African narrative through the creative space. So that's just a bit about the work that I do. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Timothy. All right, my first question, maybe I'll just start with you, Francis. Why is ICT and innovation such an important topic to discuss when it comes to Africa? Why do you feel it's a relevant topic?
Thank you once again, Jonas. I think ICT and innovation is a widely talked about subject, and especially within the last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot has happened that has really thrust us into a space that I would say were probably not prepared for. If you look at a lot of the problems that we face on the continent, these are things that we can use ICT and innovation to solve. I'll probably start with the agricultural sector, because that's where I was engaged in most recently. For instance, about 70, the African population spends about maybe 50 to 70% of their disposable income on food. And why is this? The reason behind this is because we don't have the market sector. The food market sector is informalized, and due to that, there are many middlemen in the picture. And so, because of that, of course, when you have middlemen in the picture, the cost of food goes up. So how has ICT helped to sort of bridge that gap? There are a lot of things that technologies that we can talk about. For instance, if you consider blockchain, how do you trace, from farm to fork, from the farmer, from the farm to the table of the consumer? How can you trace the value chain all the way from where the goods are being gotten from to where the consumer is? How do you manage the fleet that is transporting those particular the food produce from there to the warehouse, and from the warehouse to the people distributing the food? So that's just one area. If you look at another area, is governance. Our elections are always filled with controversy. Why? Because we have no valid way of being able to ensure that our electoral process has a good sense of integrity. But again, technologies that are currently there can help us to solve this issue if we are able to digitize that particular area of governance, and even to end corruption. When you talk about issues like corruption, digitization can do a lot to reduce, probably not eliminate, but just to reduce the level of corruption. Because when you put in systems that can ensure integrity, then you can be able to lower the issue of corruption. So that's what I would probably say. That's why it's a really important discussion for us to keep having, because as Africa, we are lagging behind in digital literacy. Whereas other nations are at 85% digital literacy, Africa is at 50%. So we've got quite a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Very good point. Thank you so much for that, Francis. Kamal, my next question is for you. What do you see as being the biggest challenges here in the ICT innovation sector, as part of limiting or barriers that is kind of prohibiting the usability of it or the expansion of it?
Thank you, Jonas. So I think two of the top challenges would be, one, funding. Funding, especially for startups in the very initial stages, before they can prove that the idea is valuable and it can work and it can actually solve our problem. So that we don't have problem once the idea is advanced, has been tested, because all investors want to come in and scale it, because at that point it looks lucrative. But at the point of where the startup is starting out and they still want to validate the ideas, they still need to bring in some technical expertise that probably is not available even locally. And I'm speaking so much drawing from blockchain as an example. There's a big gap in that space in terms of funding. The other thing I think in terms of regulation, there's sometimes a gap when it's a new technology and the regulators don't know how to accept it or to treat it. And of course, I'm still drawing from blockchain as an example, where it's sort of like it's deemed as illegal, where it's not. It's just because there's no specific regulation to cover or to guide how this innovation should develop. So those are the top two challenges that ICT faces, especially in the startup level when they're starting.
Exactly. So funding, early stage funding, specifically when you're starting off, there's like a missing funding piece there, and also regulation is part of understanding, how to regulate or how to enable new technologies to exist, even though it's in early stage, right? I know some countries are doing it by creating technology sandboxes, for example. So then you're at least allowed to play around with the technology and it's not deemed illegal. So yeah, thank you so much for that insight, Kamal. Timothy, I want to ask you the same questions around, what challenges that you see in terms of, the ICT and innovation sector, or do you agree with Kamal, or do you see other areas where you would also like to add on to?
I think for me, I agree with some of the sentiments. Funding, of course, has always been a key challenge, but we've seen quite some transformation over the last 5 years or so in terms of funding, particularly. 2020, for example, was seen as one of the years that most African countries were able to receive quite enormous amounts of funding despite the aspect of the pandemic. Most of it going towards renewable energy or clean energy space. We've seen a boost with, in Kenya, for example, we've seen a boost over the last 5 years of funding from about $101 million in 2016 up to about $266 million in 2020. And Kenya, for example, alone received about 25% of the funding that was channeled towards Africa just last year. So funding, yes, has always been a challenge and will always be a challenge because there's never really enough funding to meet all the needs for all the entrepreneurs across the ecosystem. But what can we do with the funding that is available is what really matters. But I think some other challenge that I've seen is with that things change up so fast in Africa. So there's the changing norms of how practices of things have been ongoing for a long time. I remember one of the challenges I evidenced when the forex regulations were to be adopted in Kenya was that there was nothing existing in that space, but young, innovative entrepreneurs, young guys had already leapfrogged ahead and started doing forex trading by leveraging what is already existing online. But there were no regulations in country, and this is back in 2016, to be able to limit the extent of forex trading. So there are people who would con people across the market and things like that. So sometimes innovation, more often than not, comes before regulation. And these changing norms are one of the core challenges that we face, because then the governments of the day are not able to understand how do we then adapt to what is changing and fit it within the context of innovation. I think one of the core things that I've seen and I've participated in through 2020 and is still ongoing in the Kenyan Parliament is the Startup Bill 2020, which was gazetted on September 14th. And this Startup Bill is trying to kind of create an enabling environment for entrepreneurs. So some of these challenges that are already existing in the market, there's an existing legal framework that is coming into play that can enable, try and mitigate some of these challenges. So for me, top of the issue is that we have some changing norms and ways of doing things in Africa that sometimes limits the growth of startups in the ecosystem.
No, I really hear you on that one, and I think that's a very valid point to lift. I see Francis lifted his hand. Francis, feel free to jump in.
Thank you, Jonas. I'd just like to add on to what Kamau and Timothy have said about the challenges. The other things that I would consider also is the lack of skilled personnel, especially when it comes to the tech industry. And you find that this, of course, stems from our education systems. If we are not inculcating the a curriculum that involves, use of digital tools, right from when our kids are, in the early stages of education, then how do we expect that, when they get older, they'll be able to be entrenched into the job market? A recent report released by the IFC says that in 2030, about 230 billion jobs will be available, which will require you to have, digital literacy and use of digital skills. So if you look at that, that's in the next 9 years. If our kids are not prepared for that, and those people who are going through early childhood and going through school right now, if they are not ready for that, then how will they be able to secure jobs? If that's the direction that the world is moving into. The other challenge that I will talk about is cybersecurity, because the more we move into a space where we are fully online and we are reliant on technology, it increases what we call in security, what we call the threat landscape. So that means, therefore, that if we are not aware, if there's not enough user awareness training that has gone on regarding the risks that exist out there in cyberspace, then people will be vulnerable to such kind of attacks. And of course, this will then slow down the fourth industrial revolution, as we call it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. So how do you look at, in terms of ICT and innovation and opportunities here? What are the key technologies or key areas where you think you will see a lot of opportunities within ICT innovation sector in Africa? I know in the beginning, Francis, you mentioned agriculture, for example, and you also gave some good examples around, market systems and pricing and so on. But do you see other sectors that you think will be highly influenced by ICT innovation? And yeah, what opportunities are those?
So apart from the ones I mentioned earlier when I was starting, I think the other area that we would want to have a keen interest in or look at is healthcare and insurance. For instance, now in the insurance industry, technologies like IoT are being used to determine, what kind of policy to give to a policy holder. Let's say, for instance, there are various sensors that can be installed within your vehicle that can be able to tell the insurance company, give some analytics to the insurance company on, whether you're a hard breaker or basically your driving behavior. And if you're an erratic driver or a careless driver, then of course your premiums will be higher. But if you're a careful driver, then your premiums would be lower. If you're driving mostly at night, where the chances of getting an accident are higher, if you're driving in an area that you're prone to get an accident, or if you're driving during the day. So these are the kind of data that insurance industries are looking for, so they can make a decision on what kind of premiums they can give you, and maybe how they can craft their insurance, their packages, on whether you can pay pay as you drive, for instance, so that you only pay for the period within which you're driving, but while your car is at rest, you really don't have to pay for that. So these are some of the things that technologies like IoT will help us to achieve. If you look at, for instance, the healthcare industry, some of these smartwatches that we're wearing these days, and the Fitbits, they can be able to send information, for instance, to your doctor or about just your general health. Let's say if you're exercising and what your heart rate is, and you can be able to pick up early signs and symptoms of something that could be devastating in future for you, and be able to treat it right away. So we're really looking a lot at the healthcare and the insurance industry, because I think there's a lot that can be done within that particular area. And of course, the financial services as well. You've noticed that most banks right now, I'm curious, when was the last time you visited a banking hall?
A month ago.
A month ago. So you see what I mean? Before that, maybe 10 years ago, that would have been like, probably more frequent than that. But due to technology and where we're at right now, you can simply do everything on your phone. And when we move into when it's blockchain and Bitcoin have become a more accepted form of transacting, we'll begin to see even further changes in that. In a particular area. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that, Francis. Regarding what you were saying about IoT and healthcare, my master thesis was about that, specifically about how IoT could be utilized in the healthcare sector as part of data and, informing doctors about how you're doing in general. But thank you so much. I want to ask Kamal, same thing here. Where do you see the big opportunities for, within innovation, ICT, and also specifically for the youth? Since, the median age in Africa is 19. So, yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, just to echo what Bwangi said about financial services, I think that is one of the biggest spaces that's going to be transformed by technology, specifically, again, blockchain, because as you've noted that it's quite a while since you went to the bank last. Personally, also do not. I mean, I always use my apps. My bank, of course, has an app that I use, and I use M-Pesa a lot, and it's moving from the traditional way of how people used to go and line up, and even just go to ATMs, because you can withdraw your money from your bank to your M-Pesa, and of course with M-Pesa you can pay for like everything that you need to pay. So you don't even need like hard cash. You don't even need a card, so to speak. So long as you have M-Pesa and you have your bank, then sorted. And how this is also transforming is through cryptocurrency, where you are your own bank and your own custody of your funds, that you do not have to have a trusted entity to custody your assets. And so, I mean, blockchain is still in initial beginning stages, but within the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see it grow, and we're going to see many other probably cryptocurrencies besides the ones that are known and other, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, becoming mainstream, and people exchanging peer-to-peer. So that's one of those areas that is really going to get a big transformation through technology, financial services. There are area that I think is going to also see a lot of change is in terms of education. Because during this corona pandemic period, you've seen that, learning has still been going on, but how it has been done is through online classes, that even exams are administered online, besides just the learning in class. And so that is, there's some innovations and some advancements that have been made during this period, because people have not been moving, and because people will not go to class. And that is an area that is also bound to grow exponentially within the next few years, because people have realized you do not actually need to go to a physical class for you to get an education or to learn. And finally, I think the other area is in agribusiness or agriculture in general. So these technologies that and innovations that are coming up, where they can tell specifically, probably in terms of when the rain is expected, probably insect the crop, and all the health of the plant, and even for animals. And so I think these top three areas are the ones that are going to be getting the biggest benefit from advancements in technology as we go forward.
Thank you so much for that, Kamal. Much appreciated. I want to move on to you, Timothy. Something that's been mentioned during this panel is the fourth industrial revolution. What will this mean for Africa? And do you think the robots will take all the jobs from the youth?
It's a very good question. Because I think when we talk about innovation, innovation has always been seen as some top-tier key things like robotics, augmented reality, 3D printing, some big terminologies that seem very far-fetched from the youth on the ground. To be very honest, I don't think robots can ever replace humans in their entirety. I think there are enough spaces where young people can be able to leapfrog in using ICT as an enabler in the ecosystem. So I do not see a point where we'll get that, the employment rate will drop exponentially because of introduction of robotics into the ecosystem. But I think what is, for me, important, and I've observed over this year, is how do we then spur inclusive employment opportunities for young people? We've seen a lot of companies have closed down through 2020 because they realize actually we don't need staff to be at one location, and they can be decentralized, but we can still perform. So how do we spur inclusive employment opportunities through ICT? How can we leapfrog employment opportunities through ICT? And basically what the internet enables us to do is to be able to connect with anyone from anywhere in the world. So you can actually be doing some work for someone in DC or in Australia without necessarily being in that office physically. So I see an opportunity of leapfrogging employment by creating new strategies for companies and for employers. The other thing that I see that I think Kamau talked about it is education, but more so over and above the traditional education of undertaking theoretical courses, I see an opportunity where we can actually teach technical courses where people can learn skill sets back at home. And that is still a very gray area, but then there needs to be innovative ways of teaching practical skills, because practical skills like plumbing, woodwork, and all these particular kind of skills are skills that are needed on the ground every day by different individuals. Then for me, I also see a really great increase, particularly because of just social media in itself. Social media has created new employment opportunities for young people through people becoming bloggers, people become vlogging, or people just talking about things that they care about, and that becoming a big hit. So that shows you that there's still a lot of opportunity in that space that we have not really explored with YouTube. Perhaps each of us needs to have a YouTube channel. Jonas, do you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, I'm starting one,
All
actually.
Right,
Yeah. I have a plan for it. Yeah, my problem is because I haven't had that much time. I don't want to spend too much time on social media, because once you post stuff, you also get people commenting or asking questions, and if you don't reply on it, you're impolite, right? And you don't understand social media. So it's aspect of if you're going to do it, then you better do it right, in the sense that, when people are commenting or answering, you should also have the time to reply and not.
Yes.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm an irresponsive social media player. But I definitely understand you, and you can see a lot more micro influencers popping up all everywhere, and focusing on their passion interests, right? If it's fashion, if it's entrepreneurship, if it's, about anything really.
Yeah, and maybe my last point would be around, I think we usually talk about going over and above the traditional banking systems. But for me, I look at what are the micro funding mechanisms that are available in the ecosystem that can give you $10, $20, that is not necessarily your typical cryptocurrency space. So what microfinancing opportunities can ICT play in? And we've seen a growth of that micro funding opportunities by companies like Tala, for example. So I see that looking at the African market being very organized by what we call chamas or circles, then there is a very strong opportunity to leapfrog the growth of microfinancing models through ICT by decentralizing the common aspects of circles. So I think for me, that is my last tire as to where I see an opportunity.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of the, before you lend out money, it's about credit scoring. It's about, having access to information so you can kind of assess the loan or whatever is in front of you. So I think it's definitely a sector that will be highly influenced by ICT and innovation. I see here we got a comment from my colleague that we are running out of time, but I have just a quick question, and I would like a short answer from everybody. Just a short one, if you can try. It's a difficult question, but for the past 5-10 years, the topic around leapfrogging, ICT, M-Pesa, and smartphones, and how this will kind of open up these leapfrogging opportunities has been a discussion point quite a lot. But even though things are changing and you can see development happening, it hasn't happened in the same rate as to be categorized as leapfrogging. What is it that has, at least that's my opinion. Do you agree with that? Or don't agree? Okay, looks like you somewhat agree. So my question is this, why hasn't more happened in the past 5-10 years to leapfrog the ICT or innovation sector in Africa?
Okay.
Feel free
Can
to
I?
go ahead.
Yeah, let me go first. I'll use the specific example of, so I'm going to talk about regulation and specifically in Kenya, and I'll use the example of drones. If you look at a country like Rwanda, they have this technology that they call, I think they called it the zip line, where they can deliver, they can replenish blood banks around the country by use of drones. Now, that is a good example of what, technology can achieve when it's not over-regulated. If you look at a case like Kenya, fine. About 2 years ago, the government now said it's now okay. You can go ahead and buy your own drone. But the licensing costs are over the roof. I mean, by the time you're done getting your drone, I mean, you've paid through the roof for it, and even just the operating costs. So I would say really regulation has been what has hampered the rate of growth, because past 5-10 years we should be farther than where we are right now, really. So if the government would really look at like what Timothy said, it's innovation is followed by.
Oh no, we lost you, Francis.
It's not the.
Oh, sorry, Francis. I think we lost you.
Sorry about that.
Can you please repeat what you said the last 5 seconds?
Sorry about that. I was just saying that innovation, what Timothy said was correct, that innovation should be followed by regulation, not the other way around. So that's something that if it's really looked into, then it can accelerate, our growth in the tech space.
Thank you so much for that, Francis. Kamal, what's your thoughts on this?
I think I'll just echo one of those things that Mwangi said, which is regulation. So in terms of sort of like a ceiling on how far or how fast you can go. And the other thing will be the capacity, like in terms of the capacity for those people for which the technology is built for. So some of which will be they do not either, and they don't have the capacity to acquire. Let me give you an example of, say, education, where with tablets, but how many schools can be able to afford? So the capacity for, the beneficiary to afford or rather of these technologies, which might be very good, offers a really good platform for them to advance, but they are limited in terms of either where they are or how much they can probably access. And since it's a short answer.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Kamal. Really appreciate it. And I think we have come to the stage where we need to close. I see we are a few minutes above time. Time kind of disappeared on me. I felt like we had a lot more time, but it just, and then it's gone. But either way, I really appreciate having you on this panel. Really, really appreciate that. So thank you so much, Timothy, Kamal, and Francis, for participating on this panel.
Thank
Highly
you so
appreciate
much
it.
for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for everybody that's watching live on either Facebook and YouTube, thank you so much for joining us on this journey. We have now wrapped up day one of Taxpayer Impact, with the last panel being the ICT and Innovation panel. See you again tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.